Think about the last group chat you left, or the club you quit, or the friend group that just quietly stopped being a friend group. You probably blamed a person, a falling out, a misunderstanding, but the real answer is far stranger. Every group you have ever joined was already carrying the seeds of its own split, and the Bible wrote down the blueprint for that thousands of years before psychologists had a name for it. Genesis 11 tells a short story. Humanity has just survived the flood. Everyone speaks one language, everyone lives in one place, and instead of scattering across the earth like they were meant to, they gather in the plain of Shinar and start building. Bricks instead of stone, tar instead of mortar, a tower with its top in the heavens. Their stated goal is simple: make a name for ourselves, stay together, don't get scattered. God comes down, looks at what they've built, and does something strange. He doesn't destroy the tower. He doesn't send a flood. He confuses their language. And the moment they can't understand each other, the unity collapses on its own. No war, no lightning bolt. Just a sudden inability to communicate, and the whole project falls apart from the inside. Here's the part most sermons skip. The confusion of language wasn't really the punishment, it was the mechanism. The real punishment, if you can even call it that, was scattering, and scattering was already coming. Because every human group, once it grows past a certain size, starts speaking different languages whether God intervenes or not. You've felt this. Maybe not with actual foreign words, but with meaning. A word that means one thing to you means something slightly different to your coworker. A joke that lands with one friend falls flat with another. As a group grows, its shared language quietly splinters into dialects, and nobody notices until the moment two people say the exact same sentence and mean two different things by it. Psychologist Henry Tajfel spent decades studying why this happens. In his minimal group experiments in the 1970s, he took British schoolboys who had no history with each other, split them into groups based on something as meaningless as a coin flip, and watched what happened next. Within minutes, the boys favored their own group and treated the other group worse, even when there was nothing at stake and no reason to compete. Tajfel called this social identity. The moment you're placed in a group, your brain starts building an us, and the moment there's an us, there's automatically a them, even if them is just the other half of your own tribe standing 10 feet away. That's the twist. Babel wasn't punished for being united. Babel was already fracturing before the languages split, because that's what human groups do once they get big enough to need an us and a them inside themselves. Ancient Near Eastern scholars have pointed out something else. The tower in Genesis wasn't just architecture, it was a ziggurat, the kind of structure Mesopotamian cities built to reach their gods and anchor their identity. Building one wasn't really about height, it was about control. A single tower, a single city, a single name, so that no one would ever have to leave and become someone else's them. The text says it plainly. They built so they would not be scattered over the face of the whole earth. Unity wasn't the goal, staying the same was the goal. And staying the same is not something any group, sacred or secular, has ever managed to do for long. Psychologist Sherif proved this decades before he had Genesis in mind, in a summer camp experiment now known as Robber's Cave. He took a group of ordinary 11-year-old boys, all from similar backgrounds, all friendly with each other, and split them into two cabins. Within days, without any encouragement, the boys had formed rival identities, given themselves names, and started raiding each other's campsites. Same boys, same values, same starting point. One partition and an us versus them appeared out of nothing. So here's the question worth sitting with. If splitting is this automatic, why does it feel so personal every time it happens to you? Because you experience the mechanism as betrayal. You experience Tajfel's minimal groups as a friend suddenly siding with someone else. You experience Sherif's rival cabins as your book club splitting into two book clubs that don't speak anymore. You experience Babel's confused languages as a coworker who used to get you and now doesn't. It always feels like a person did this to you, but the pattern is older than any person involved. It's older than the argument that supposedly started it. It's built into what happens when enough humans stand in the same place for long enough. Modern research on group schisms backs this up directly. Social psychologist Fabio Sani studied why religious congregations, political parties, and even friend groups fracture, and found a consistent pattern. A subgroup starts to feel that the larger group has drifted from its founding identity. They don't leave quietly, they leave loudly, convinced they're the ones preserving what the group was always supposed to be. Sound familiar? It's the tower builder's own logic, inverted. Where Babel tried to prevent scattering by staying unified, modern schisms happen because someone believes unity has already been lost, and the only way to protect the real group is to become a new one. There's a name for the ceiling every group eventually hits. Anthropologist Robin Dunbar found that human beings can only maintain stable, trusting relationships with roughly 150 people at a time. Push a group past that number and it doesn't get stronger, it gets brittle. Subcultures form. Inside jokes stop reaching everyone. Trust starts requiring proof instead of assumption. Shinar wasn't a village. The text implies a civilization, a whole post-flood humanity in one place. That's not a group holding together. That's a group already past its breaking point, just waiting for a reason to admit it. And maybe that reframes the whole story. Maybe God didn't scatter humanity out of anger. Maybe the scattering was already inevitable, and the language confusion just made it honest. A group too large to actually know each other, forced into small enough pieces that people could go back to speaking the same language again, literally and otherwise. Diversity in this reading isn't the curse, it's the correction. Think about your own life for a second. Every community you've ever loved, if it grew big enough, eventually split. The band that broke up, the church that planted a second campus and never felt the same, the friend group that turned into two friend groups who still love each other but don't hang out anymore. You didn't do anything wrong, neither did they most of the time. You just hit the size where us quietly split into a few smaller, more honest versions of itself. The Bible calls this Babel. Psychology calls it minimal groups, in-group bias, schism, and Dunbar's number. Different names, same mechanism, discovered independently thousands of years apart. That's not a coincidence you should brush past. That's a sign that this story was never really about ancient bricklayers reaching for heaven. It was about you, standing in whatever group you're standing in right now, feeling the first quiet signs of a language starting to split. So the next time a group you love starts to fracture, and you feel that urge to find the one person to blame, remember Shinar. Remember the boys in the two cabins who were friends a week earlier. Remember that the tower was never really about height. It was about staying the same forever, in a world that was never built to let anything stay the same forever. You're not watching a group chat die. You're watching Babel happen again, in real time, in miniature, right in front of you. And now you know it was never really about the language at all. Thank you for watching. Let me know in the comments of any other Bible stories you guys would like to hear about. Also, make sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe so you can be the first to know about future content.